Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's baking blog. Today I'm going to make some sticky cinnamon buns. So these are going to be swirls, like cinnamon swirls, with some cinnamon inside with a sticky sauce on the top, which actually you put into your baking tray and stand the buns on top, and they bake like that, and when you turn them out the sticky sauce is on the top. I'm going to use some pecans to go on the top as well. I haven't decided yet, I may only use half the amount of pecans and just cover half of them and leave the other half without. But whatever, in my recipe I will give the amounts for covering all the buns with the pecans. I'm going to do the ingredients in two stages. The ingredients for the bread dough first, and then once that dough is proofing I can go on to the ingredients for the sauce and for the cinnamon filling. So it's not a difficult recipe, but it does take time because we have to proof the dough after we've made it until it doubles in size, and then we have to roll it out and shape it and then proof it again before we bake it. And I'll go on to the ingredients, and as I mentioned, these are just the ingredients for the bread dough, and here I have 525 grams, which is 3.5 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of bread flour. I have 310 millilitres, 1.25 cups plus 2 teaspoons of milk, which I have heated, and this is semi-skimmed milk. I've heated that to 42 degrees Celsius, 110 Fahrenheit, so lukewarm basically. I have 50 grams, 1/4 cup of caster sugar, 56 grams, 1/4 cup of melted unsalted butter, which is cooling down, 1 medium egg, which would be large in the USA, 7 grams, 2.25 teaspoons or 1 packet of instant yeast, and 3 grams, half a teaspoon of salt. And that's all the ingredients we need for the dough. So the first thing we need to do is to make that dough. And to make the dough I'm going to use my Ankarsrum Mixer. And I should say, well, first of all, you can use any mixer you want, or you can do it by hand. Using a mixer makes it so much easier, of course. But I ought to say that I've had a lot of comments about my mixer asking questions. So maybe if I have time at the end of this video, I will show you a little bit more about the Ankarsrum Mixer. But we'll see how we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put my milk into the bowl of the mixer, and the yeast, and then the melted butter, and the sugar, and my egg. And I'm just going to give those a mix around to get those combined. And that's good like that. That's mixed well enough. So then I'm going to put in about half of the flour. You don't have to be exact because it's all going to go in. And onto that I'm going to sprinkle my salt. And then I'll start to mix the dough, and I'll add the remaining flour as it's mixing. and that's very quickly become a shaggy dough. So I'm going to knead that for 5 or 6 minutes until it's all nice and soft and smooth. So that is mixed. I'll just check that. Well, that's nice and soft, smooth and springy, and it's very, very good. And I'm going to leave that in the bowl for it to proof until it's doubled in size, and I will cover it with the lid of my bowl like that, and it will take maybe an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours until it's doubled in size, but however long it takes, that's how long I'm going to leave it. And then at that stage we'll be ready to roll that out and use it. But I'll come back before that to make the sauce that's going to go into the bottom of my baking tray, and to make the filling for the inside of the buns, and I will give you the ingredients for those at that time. My dough is proofing, so I'll go on to the ingredients for the sauce and for the filling. And for the sauce, I'm going to use 200 grams, 1 cup of light brown sugar, 115 grams, half a cup of unsalted butter. I'm going to use 100 grams, which is 5 tablespoons of golden syrup, and I'm going to use 45 millilitres, 3 tablespoons of water. Now you could use maple syrup or corn syrup if you wanted to, but I've got golden syrup, so that's what I'm going to use, and that will be for the sauce that goes in the bottom of my pan. And then for the filling, I'm going to use 135 grams, 2/3 of a cup of light brown sugar, and 6 grams, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. And I'm using Ceylon cinnamon, which has a milder, more floral flavour than the normal cassia cinnamon, but you can use whichever you want. I'm also going to use about 3 tablespoons, 42 grams of unsalted butter to brush on the dough, and I will melt that butter before I knead it. And then I'm going to use some nuts, and I was going to use pecans, but I've decided to use a combination of pecans and cashew nuts, because I have both and I love cashew nuts, and they're quite soft as well. Pecans are very soft. Now you could use walnuts, you could use pecans, you could use any nuts, or you can leave the nuts out completely if you want. And here I have 80 grams of those nuts, which I have chopped up, and that works out at about 2/3 to 3/4 of a cup. But again, the amount you use is entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the sauce, which is very, very simple. I'm going to put the sugar into a saucepan with my water and the butter and the golden syrup. And then I'm simply going to put that onto the heat to melt everything together, stirring it. Now you don't need to see me do that. I'll just heat it up until the sugar has dissolved into the butter and the golden syrup, and then that's going to go into a 13 by 9 inch roasting tin like this, and 13 by 9 is 33 by 23 centimetres. So I'll make this sauce and then I'll come back. So my dough has doubled in size and I've knocked the air out of it, and before I go on I'm going to mix my cinnamon into my sugar to go on the inside. And I'll set that to one side, and then I'm just going to lightly flour my surface. I'm going to press my dough down, and it's already getting very puffy again, and I want to form that into a rectangle which is 18 inches by 12, which is 45 centimetres by 30, and I can do that with a rolling pin. And if I need to rest the dough for a couple of minutes because it's too springy, I will do that. And that's about good enough like that. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to brush some butter over the dough, and this is just to help the sugar and the cinnamon stick really as we roll the dough up. And I won't need all of my butter. And that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to take the sugar and I'm going to sprinkle that over fairly evenly. And I'm leaving an edge at the top and the bottom on the long side. That's going to help me to seal the dough when I roll it up. And I'll just spread that out a little bit, like that. And then I'm going to roll it up, and I'll roll it from this, no, from this end, so you can see. And that's going quite well. And then I'm going to turn it up like that and just pinch the dough together all the way along the seam. And that's good like that. So I need to divide that into 12 pieces. So I'm going to score it with a knife just to show me where I want to cut. I'm just going to tuck that in. And then I'm going to, that's 4 pieces there, and I'm going to divide each of the 4 into 3 pieces. So I'll score those. And if some are a bit bigger than others, it's not going to matter. And the easiest way to cut this, because it's quite a soft dough, is to take some cotton or some dental floss and run it under the dough and just cut across like that, and then you have a nice clean cut. And do the same with the remainder. And as you can see, I have poured my sauce into my baking tray or my roasting tray, and I have sprinkled the nuts over the surface. I actually forgot to record doing that, but you can see that I've done it, and that's the bed for the dough buns to go into. As you cut them, you want to put the good side facing down in the pan, and you want to put the seam facing inwards like that, and you're going to have 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, I have filled my pan. I have quite a small one there, but it doesn't matter, they will rise up and they'll all be a decent size. So I'm going to cover those with some plastic wrap or a clean tea towel, and I'm going to leave them to rise until they have basically just about all joined up, and they've probably just about doubled in size again. And at that time I will have my oven preheated to 180 degrees Celsius. That's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And they'll be ready to bake, but I'll come back and show you them before I put them into the oven. So as you can see, my buns have risen in the pan, and they've joined up quite nicely. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those into my preheated oven for about 40 to 45 minutes until they've risen up quite nicely, and I can test the internal temperature of the dough, which should reach about 96 degrees Celsius, which is over 200 Fahrenheit, and at that time I'll know they're baked through, and the sauce should have thickened a little bit and become stickier on the bottom. Then I'll take them out of the oven and leave them in the tin for 5 to 10 minutes so that the sauce can thicken just a little bit more before I turn them out onto a baking tray. I'm going to turn it out onto a baking tray because I don't have a plate or a dish large enough to cover this pan, and the baking tray will make sure that any sauce which runs down the side doesn't drizzle everywhere basically. And I'll leave them to cool down a little bit, and then I'll come back and we'll have a taste of one. I baked my sticky cinnamon buns for 45 minutes. I wanted to make sure that they were baked all the way through. I tested them with a thermometer, and the internal temperature of the dough was actually 98 degrees Celsius, which is 208 degrees Fahrenheit. So I knew they were baked all the way through. I took them out of the oven and left them in the pan for about 10 minutes. Then I took them out of the pan. I tipped them out onto my baking tray. A little bit of the sauce had stuck to the bottom of the pan, so I gently reheated the pan to loosen the sauce, and I spooned that out onto the top. So this is what they look like now, and as you can see I've taken one away from the corner there so that I can have a taste, but they baked up very, very well, and that top is very, very sticky. So I'll have a taste of the one that I've pulled off. Very good. The dough is lovely and soft. The sauce is sticky and sweet. In fact, some of it's sticking to my teeth. I get the nuts as well, and just that little hint of cinnamon. You don't need too much cinnamon in buns like this. Very, very good indeed. And they are very easy to make. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in a very near future. So just remember, if you want to know a little bit about my mixer, I'll talk about that after I've said happy baking. So for those who are interested in my stand mixer that I've been using recently, it's called Ankarsrum. Ankarsrum mixers were first made in Sweden in the 1940s, and they were made primarily for making bread dough. And the basic mixer has stayed the same from the 1940s right up till today. The name changed slightly during that time. At one time it was an Electrolux, I think, but basically the mixer stayed the same. In recent years they've added some more features to it with another bowl, and they have some other attachments which I don't have, rather like other stand mixers for grinding meat and making sausage meat and doing that sort of thing. But I'll tell you just about what I've got and the mixer, and I bought mine mainly for making bread dough, I have to say. So this is what the mixer looks like, and it's different to most stand mixers in that it doesn't have a tilt head. The bowl goes on here and the bowl rotates, so it means that something else has to happen in order for dough to work. So if I put the bowl on there like that, there's an arm here, and that arm can be used for making the dough. And making the dough can come in two different forms. There's a dough roller with a scraper, but there's also a rather large dough hook. Now, I haven't used the dough hook, but I'll show you it. It simply slots in there like that, and then is held in place with the arm there. And then as you turn the mixer on, like that, your ingredients spin round and hit against this, and it makes the dough. And this is very useful for making doughs up to 5 kilograms, 11 pounds. But I haven't used that hook yet, although I shall at some stage, I'm sure. I tend to use the dough roller, and that attaches in the same way, like that, with a scraper that goes in there like that. And as you put the ingredients in, and you switch it on, the roller goes round, and the effect when you have dough in there is that it moves out, in and out like that, and it squeezes the dough rather like you're kneading it with your hands. So it's actually more tender on the dough than using a tilt head dough hook, because that tends to tear the dough and reduces the length of the gluten strands basically. But anyway, so that's fairly straightforward, and it works very, very well. The one difference is that using a mixer like this, you really do need to put the wet ingredients into the bowl first before you start adding the flour, and that's what I do. But that works perfectly well in a stand mixer as well, a tilt head stand mixer. So that's and that is basically what was produced in the 1940s, and it still stays the same. But as I said, there are other things that you can do with the mixer, and for that we have another bowl, and that's this bowl here. But as you see, that doesn't have anything that's going to help it. So what we do is we put a stick in there like that, and then put that on, and then we can attach things like this, which is a two-headed whisk, and that can be used for whipping egg whites and cream and things like that, and making a fairly loose cake batter. You can then take these two whisks off, and you can put two different ones on. He says if he can get it to go on. And that is a flat beater, which you can use for making cookie dough and things like that. And if I set that going, that spins round in the same way that a tilt head whisk spins round, but there's two paddles. So basically that is my mixer that I'm using, and I quite like it. I still have my tilt head mixers, and I use those from time to time. It depends on what I'm doing, but I thought I would show you, simply because I've had a good few questions on my YouTube channel asking what is that mixer. I haven't seen that before, so hopefully you found that of interest. I'll see you with my next video in the near future, so until then, happy baking.